Coronations are a declaration of our hopes for the future, and I know she's up there, fondly keeping an eye on us.
I didn't know much about domestic abuse. In fact, I knew nothing at all.
When reports emerged of Camilla clashing with King Charles, no one could have predicted the storm it would unleash inside the palace. But for Prince William, witnessing his stepmother allegedly bullying his father was the breaking point, a moment where patience gave way to decisive action. In a stunning turn, he is said to have removed Camilla from the palace itself, leaving courtiers reeling and insiders whispering. But what could drive the future king to confront her so boldly? This is the story behind that explosive royal showdown. The whispered secrets of Camilla. For years, subtle whispers had haunted the gilded halls of Clarence House. They weren't bold declarations, nor were they recorded in any official log. They were quiet, persistent murmurs that drifted like shadows through the corridors. Staff members and courtiers exchanged uneasy glances when her name arose, their words careful, their tones measured, as if one wrong syllable might unleash unseen consequences. Queen Camilla's reputation behind palace doors was a tightly held secret. Sharp, commanding, often unyielding in private, and far colder than her public composure suggested. Her influence was undeniable, yet it left a trail of tension that no one dared speak of openly. The royal household had long mastered the art of keeping appearances, smoothing over cracks, and preserving the illusion of harmony. But beneath the surface, a quiet storm had been brewing, gathering strength with every passing year. The date that finally broke the fragile silence was May 3, 2025. To the outside world, it appeared to be just another ordinary day, a morning like countless others, scheduled with the meticulous planning the monarchy demanded. The king, the queen, and senior advisors were assembled for routine discussions, notebooks open, pens ready, faces politely impassive. Yet the atmosphere that morning carried a subtle, electric charge, as though the walls themselves were anticipating a rupture. At precisely 10:30, Queen Camilla stood abruptly, her presence cutting through the room like a blade. There was no hesitation, no preamble, no polite clearing of the throat. Her voice rang sharp and unyielding, slicing through the air in a torrent of accusation. Spineless, weak, pathetic. The words struck King Charles with the force of a thunderclap.
It looks like His Majesty the King, King Charles III, will have to rethink exactly how he wishes to push ahead.
Advisors froze mid-action, senior staff caught mid-sentence, their practiced masks of neutrality crumbling. The room seemed to tilt on its axis, time slowing as the weight of her words sank in. Camilla's outburst was not a spontaneous flare of temper. It had been carefully held, restrained for years, until that precise moment when all her pent-up frustrations could erupt. She accused Charles of siding too often with Prince William, of failing to embody the strength and authority expected of a monarch, of bending instead of standing tall. Her criticisms ricocheted against the walls, echoing centuries of royal tradition and decorum. Charles did not respond. His head lowered, shoulders slumped, his usually composed face pale and drawn. In that instant, the man who had long carried titles and duties with poise appeared profoundly human, vulnerable, and broken. For those in attendance, it was a moment they would never forget, a moment when the rigid structure of the monarchy itself seemed to tremble. That morning, Clarence House erupted, shattering centuries of calm and exposing hidden tensions. But was Camilla's outburst long-awaited frustration or a sudden slip? How did this moment tip the balance of power, test loyalties, and rewrite royal authority? Let's uncover the full story. The explosive outburst. On that unforgettable morning, the quiet routine of Clarence House shattered like glass under a hammer. Queen Camilla, long known for her composed public demeanor,
the Queen Consort has hosted a reception at Clarence House alongside
unleashed a torrent of anger the likes of which the palace had never seen. Her words cut through the grand conference room like a blade, each syllable sharp and deliberate, spineless, weak, pathetic. It wasn't merely criticism, it was an emotional strike aimed straight at the heart of King Charles, a raw exposure of frustration and contempt that had been simmering in secret for years. Those present that day would later recall the scene with a mixture of awe and fear. Advisors, whose faces had been carefully trained to reveal nothing in the face of crises, froze mid-gesture. Pens hovered over papers, notes were abandoned, and a palpable tension hung in the air, heavy as if the walls themselves were absorbing the shock. For decades, the monarchy had weathered whispers of discord, scandals that flickered briefly in tabloids, and murmured doubts behind closed doors, but never had such a deeply personal confrontation been so openly unleashed. Camilla's outburst was far more than sharp words. It was the eruption of years of hidden tension and simmering resentment within the palace walls. Behind closed doors, quiet battles had been waged, whispers exchanged, and power subtly contested. Her voice rang with anger and authority, accusing King Charles of weakness, of yielding under pressure, and of favoring Prince William in ways that diminished her own influence. Every word carried the weight of long-stored grievances, a carefully held sense of betrayal now unleashed, shattering the fragile decorum of the royal hierarchy. The king, usually the epitome of regal poise, seemed to crumble under the weight of the onslaught. His shoulders slumped, his gaze dropped, and for the first time in public memory, the air of unshakable authority that had defined him seemed fragile, almost human. It was a rare glimpse of vulnerability at the very center of a palace that prided itself on discipline and tradition. Witnesses later described the emotional intensity of that morning as electric, almost suffocating. Camilla's words were not just an eruption, they were a revelation. They exposed the fractures within the royal family, the tension simmering beneath the surface, and the hidden power struggles that had remained invisible to the outside world. In one moment, decades of silence, loyalty, and careful diplomacy collapsed, leaving behind the raw, unvarnished truth. Behind the gilded walls of the palace, the monarchy was not immune to human conflict, and no one, no king, no queen, was untouchable. This confrontation, searing in its intensity, would mark a turning point, signaling that the private dynamics of the royal family could no longer remain hidden, and that the balance of power within the palace was about to be dramatically, irreversibly reshaped. Camilla's fury shattered royal tradition, exposing secrets and rocking the monarchy's fragile balance. But will such a brazen outburst go unanswered? Who will rise to protect the king in this critical moment? Now let's explore how Prince William uncovered Camilla's assaults and ignited a palace-wide storm that no one could ignore. William steps in. That evening, a quiet rebellion unfolded behind the palace walls. For years, royal aides had been trained to follow protocol, to handle delicate matters with discretion, to bury uncomfortable truths beneath layers of tradition. But on this particular night, the rules were cast aside. A small team of trusted aides, shaken by what they had witnessed, compiled a meticulous report and, in a bold break from convention, sent it directly to Prince William at his private office in Kensington Palace.
Kate and Prince William, Kensington Palace, where she's been an integral part of the private house.
The dossier was comprehensive, leaving no room for doubt or denial. It contained crisp audio recordings capturing the sharpness and venom of Queen Camilla's words as they cut through Charles, shattering his composure. There were witness statements from senior staff who had watched in stunned silence, each recounting moments of humiliation, anger, and intimidation that had been carefully catalogued over the years. Even a chronological timeline accompanied the evidence, tracing the pattern of verbal assaults that had slowly, invisibly eroded the king's confidence and exposed vulnerabilities in the very fabric of the monarchy. For William, sitting alone in the quiet of his study, reading the report page by page, the effect was electric. What might have once seemed a private family quarrel suddenly revealed itself as something far more dangerous, a direct threat to the stability of the crown. Every word, every carefully recorded instance of Camilla's cutting remarks spoke to a larger issue, a palace system under strain, one that had allowed personal grievances and hidden conflicts to fester behind the gilded facades for decades. As he absorbed the details, William's initial shock began to harden into resolve. There was a gravity to the situation, a weight that demanded action, yet he did not react impulsively. There was no room for rash decisions or emotional displays. Instead, he moved with measured purpose, considering each step carefully, plotting a course that would shield his father from further humiliation while simultaneously fortifying the institution itself. In the solitude of that evening, William envisioned a strategy that balanced protection with accountability. He understood that this was no longer merely a matter of family dynamics. It was about the monarchy's reputation, its continuity, and the trust placed in it by the public. He began formulating a plan that would not only expose the fractures in a system strained by tradition and secrecy, but also demonstrate leadership and courage, signaling to the palace and the world that the next generation of the monarchy was ready to act decisively when the crown itself was at risk. By the time night had deepened and the palace had settled into quiet, William had transformed the raw evidence before him into a blueprint for change. Calm yet resolute, he knew that protecting his father, safeguarding the institution, and confronting the unseen tensions within the royal household would require both strategy and conviction. That evening ignited more than a family clash. It marked the beginning of William's quiet revolution. But is his approach as gentle as his father's, or does he wield power with a firmer hand? How has he navigated similar storms before? Now, let's uncover how the future king is quietly reshaping the monarchy. Prince William's quiet rise. The winds inside the royal palace are shifting, and at the center of that change stands Prince William. Since King Charles's cancer diagnosis,
King Charles III has been diagnosed with cancer.
William has been stepping forward in ways the world has never quite seen before. His presence is no longer simply that of the dutiful heir waiting quietly in the background. Instead, his voice and influence are becoming stronger, louder, and far more visible. Former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond explained it best when she noted that William is very much the king in waiting, and that his ideas about how the monarchy must change are now being heard at the highest levels. But with that growing power comes growing tension. Insiders whisper that the disagreements between father and son aren't just polite differences of opinion. On the surface, Charles and William may appear to be united, but behind palace doors, there are disputes about far more than strategy. They reveal two very different visions for the monarchy's future. Some claim these disagreements run so deep that they have sparked a quiet but undeniable battle for influence, one that feels like a struggle over the very direction of the crown. At the core of this conflict is how to handle the monarchy's most delicate problem: wayward royals. The fallout from Prince Harry and Meghan's exit, alongside other controversies, has left the family vulnerable. Charles leans toward caution and compromise, while William, according to those close to him, prefers sharper, more decisive action. Their goals are not the same, nor are their methods. As royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams observed, their style is different. So are their ages. William will want a changed monarchy which appeals in the future in a different way. That difference in vision is shaping William's every move. Although he is in no hurry to formally take the throne, he has said so himself, he has already begun sketching out what his reign might look like. Last year, he made headlines when he declared his desire to put a smaller heir in the royal, a statement many interpreted as his intention to streamline the monarchy and strip away some of its excess. And insiders say he is already acting on that philosophy. With Charles granting him more responsibility, William has seized the chance to make bold choices. According to those close to the family, he has been monitoring spending with unprecedented care, trimming what he sees as unnecessary costs, and pushing for a leaner, sharper institution that feels relevant to modern Britain. Some even believe he has the makings of the toughest monarch the family has ever known, one willing to make hard decisions, no matter how unpopular they may be. Though William still holds the title of Prince of Wales, he steadily reshapes the monarchy. But how will he handle Camilla's shocking actions and protect the crown from scandal? Now let's uncover how he reclaimed control, restored order, and safeguarded the monarchy with unmatched strategy and foresight. From family clash to royal reckoning, William's actions were swift, deliberate and uncompromising. Within hours of receiving the detailed reports of Queen Camilla's repeated outbursts, he had begun orchestrating a careful response, one designed not merely to address the immediate humiliation inflicted upon King Charles, but to safeguard the very integrity of the monarchy itself. He summoned palace staff for private discussions, collecting first-hand testimonies and reviewing every incident with painstaking attention. Each voice was heard, every account carefully documented, building a comprehensive picture of years of tension, resentment, and unchecked behavior. William's determination was clear. He would leave no detail unexamined, no oversight unchallenged. As the days unfolded, the shift in power became visible. Camilla, once the unmistakable force at the heart of palace life, suddenly found herself on the periphery. Meetings she had historically dominated now proceeded without her input. Events she had once directed were scheduled without her presence or influence. Invitations were rerouted, priorities reassigned, and her once commanding voice faded from the decision-making process. The palace's intricate machinery, which had long catered to her authority, was quietly but unmistakably recalibrated under William's watchful eye. It was as if the halls themselves were recognizing a new hierarchy, one rooted not in entitlement, but in responsibility and vision. What began as a private clash between husband and wife had rapidly transformed into a decisive confrontation over control of the monarchy. Yet William's approach was never one of vindictiveness. Each action was measured. Each decision weighed against the twin pillars of respect for centuries-old royal tradition and the pressing need for a modern, accountable, and functional monarchy. He understood the delicate balance required. Too much force might fracture the family further, yet inaction risked eroding public trust and undermining the institution itself. Behind closed doors, his strategy was precise. He consulted advisors, carefully considering every precedent, every potential backlash, every ripple that might spread across the Commonwealth. Simultaneously, he began reshaping the public face of the monarchy, signaling a new era of transparency, decisiveness, and ethical governance. While tradition dictated deference and decorum, William demonstrated that protecting the crown sometimes demanded boldness, pragmatism, and an unflinching willingness to act. Each calculated move reinforced his emerging role as a guardian of the monarchy. By stepping in decisively, he not only shielded his father from further embarrassment, but also reasserted the monarchy's credibility and stability. Camilla's influence waned not with public spectacle, but with quiet, methodical precision, a testament to William's understanding that true power lies in thoughtful, strategic action rather than displays of dominance. In every sense, he was proving that the survival of the crown depended on courage, clarity, and the willingness to make difficult choices, even when those choices unsettled the very foundations of palace life. With ruthless precision, William reshaped the monarchy, leaving Camilla powerless, her influence erased in history's glaring light. But what awaits her after such awful remarks toward the king? Now let's unravel the shocking maneuvers William used to strip Camilla of power and silence her forever. The fall of the Queen. Within a single day, Prince William moved with remarkable speed and authority, calling an emergency session of the Crown Council, an extraordinary assembly convened only in the gravest of circumstances. In his hands, he carried a meticulously compiled dossier, a chilling record of Queen Camilla's repeated humiliations of King Charles, coupled with his father's heartfelt, desperate plea for intervention. Every page detailed sharp words, controlling behavior, and moments of public and private intimidation, creating an undeniable portrait of a queen whose actions threatened the very stability of the monarchy. The council gathered in tense silence, the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on the chamber. 12 distinguished members, representing the United Kingdom and the wider Commonwealth, leaned over the thick dossier, reading testimony after testimony. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable mix of history, power, and judgment. For hours, legal precedents were debated, loyalties weighed, and centuries-old traditions scrutinized. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that the monarchy's course would be forever altered by the outcome of this meeting. After what felt like an eternity, the vote was unanimous. Camilla's ceremonial powers were stripped immediately.
Crawling started. I'm still enjoying it.
Her public appearances and duties were suspended. Her influence within the palace abruptly and decisively erased. The decision was not just a symbolic act. It was a statement that the monarchy, long seen as untouchable, was accountable, even at its highest levels. As the news spread, the impact was immediate and unmistakable. Digital platforms updated in real time, reflecting the change in Camilla's status. Where she had once been described as an active representative of the crown, her biography now read simply, wife of King Charles III. Her presence on websites, social media, and official communications diminished day by day, a subtle but unmistakable erasure that mirrored her lost authority within the palace walls. By September, the consequences became visible in the real world. Camilla was quietly relocated to a modest estate, far from the grandeur of Clarence House and the bustle of royal events. Her staff was drastically reduced, public engagements cancelled, and her communications filtered through King Charles's office. The woman who had once wielded influence with confidence and fire was now silenced. Her power dissolved completely. In less than a year, the palace had undergone a profound transformation. William's decisive action not only protected his father but reasserted control over the monarchy, ensuring that authority, respect, and the dignity of the crown remained intact. What began as a personal conflict had escalated into a sweeping reordering of royal hierarchy, leaving Camilla sidelined, powerless, and a mere shadow of her former influence. William's decisive move ended Camilla's reign, transforming the monarchy forever. But with her influence erased, who now truly commands the crown? Let's dive into how William and Catherine seized control, reshaping royal tradition and ushering in a bold, unprecedented new era. A monarchy reborn. As Camilla gradually slipped out of the public's attention, the spotlight shifted unmistakably onto William and Catherine. No longer were they simply figures of royal lineage. They became symbols of competence, grace, and determination. Their popularity surged like a rising tide, capturing the admiration of not only their own country, but the wider world. Leaders from across the globe now sought their counsel directly, engaging with them as equals and recognizing the pair as capable, forward-thinking representatives of the monarchy. The royal family, once mired in uncertainty and public skepticism, began to regain the trust and respect of a watchful populace. People saw in William and Catherine a refreshing clarity of purpose, a modern approach to tradition, and a sense of accountability long absent. Meanwhile, Charles, who had long been the central figure in the royal narrative, now stood largely as a symbolic presence. His role was defined by ceremonial duties, the visible embodiment of continuity and history. Yet, behind the formal appearances, he wrestled with the tension between personal desire and royal responsibility. Though the heart may have pulled him toward love, duty tethered him to a larger obligation, a reminder that in the corridors of power, personal longing often bowed to the weight of legacy. In contrast, William seized the moment with remarkable vision. No longer constrained by hesitation or the shadows of scandal, he began reshaping the monarchy with decisiveness and transparency. Every decision, every public appearance, conveyed intentionality and purpose. Policies, charitable endeavors, and public engagements reflected not just obligation, but a thoughtful, strategic vision for the monarchy's role in a modern society. Where fear and indecision had once prevailed, action and resilience now dominated. William and Catherine became a dynamic duo, embodying a new standard of leadership, approachable yet authoritative, compassionate yet firm. What had initially erupted as a personal scandal, a moment that could have weakened the monarchy irreparably, instead became a transformative turning point. The public witnessed not humiliation, but reinvention, not failure, but growth. The monarchy evolved before their eyes, shifting from an institution of mere tradition to one that combined heritage with relevance, ceremony with substance, and legacy with forward momentum. The narrative changed. The royal family was no longer just a symbol of the past, but a living, adaptive force. capable of navigating turbulence with clarity and courage. By the end of this chapter, a new era had firmly taken hold, an era defined by purpose, action, and resilience. William and Catherine were no longer just heirs to a crown. They were architects of the monarchy's revival, guiding it into a future where leadership was measured by integrity and effectiveness rather than fear or hesitation. In the wake of controversy, they had carved a path of renewed trust and admiration, proving that even the deepest crises could be transformed into opportunities for enduring change. So what do you think about Camilla's removal from the palace by William? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.